From WBNS 10 TV, your 24-hour news source. This is 10 TV Eyewitness News.
Ohio wants this man.
I've been tortured. I've been brutalized. I've spent years in solitary confinement.
Inside the walls of Ohio's most notorious prison, he predicted the riot. They didn't listen. We are paying for the damage. Now the state wants him to pay.
I don't know if we would consider him dangerous.
So why is Ohio spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring this man back behind bars? Fugitive from justice or refugee of injustice? And we begin tonight with an incredible story of crime, of punishment, and the questionable spending of your tax dollars.
This is a 10 TV exclusive. Timothy Little Rock Reed is an Ohio man on the run. He says his dirty little secret about the Ohio prison system makes him a marked man. Tonight, you'll hear what he knows, what the state is doing, and how much you're paying to bring him home.
The Supreme Court cleared the way for extradition, if they can find him. Well, the 10 TV I-Team did, and Paul Adrian traveled across the country, the final miles, blindfolded before Little Rock Reed would talk to us. Paul Kenny questioned the people dedicated to bringing him back, and Kurt Ludlow puts this in perspective. Is this all worth it? We have team coverage on our top story tonight, and we begin live in New Mexico with I-Team reporter Paul Adrian. Paul, a fascinating story.
Dave, it certainly is. This is one of the more unique extradition cases in American history. After all, Ohio has wanted parole violator Timothy Little Rock Reed returned to the state for years, but courts here in New Mexico have refused to hand him over, saying that his life would be in jeopardy should he be returned to Ohio. But now the United States Supreme Court says he must go, and he's almost ready to go, but first he wants to tell his story. A soulful sound from a man who discovered the worth of his soul in an Ohio prison. This song connects Timothy Little Rock Reed to the past, but it is also a prayer for the future. And it's an uncertain future, for Ohio considers this man a fugitive who needs to return to prison.
I'm going to blindfold you.
What's the purpose in doing this?
So that you won't be able to disclose, or nobody will be able to disclose where his location is.
Little Rock doesn't want to be arrested until he's ready. We took a short trip into the mountains and found the fugitive immersing himself in his Native American religion.
Have the voice, have the clarity of mind, clarity of heart, clarity of spirit.
Spiritual leader Donnie Beartrack is the kind of man Little Rock wished he had known in prison.
And they know how to express themselves to me in a way that can help me to open up and see things in a better way, to where I can let go of that anger and, ultimately pray for my enemies.
Little Rock says Ohio prison officials refused to give him or other Indians access to their religious leaders. He made a name for himself by suing the state. It didn't bring him any spiritual leaders, but he thinks it did get him extra time in prison.
The parole board people showed me that, and they told me that if I withdrew from my intent to file it, that my chances of parole were very likely.
Little Rock did not withdraw his lawsuit and served 10 full years for a robbery conviction. In 1992, he left prison but continued to campaign for prisoner rights. Little Rock sued the state to try to improve conditions at the Lucasville prison.
We all knew there was going to be a riot. We were scared. We didn't want there to be one. We tried to get the federal court to intervene. We tried to get the governor to intervene. We tried to get the prison director to intervene. We tried to get the grievance inspector to intervene. Without exception, none of them would do anything.
Little Rock blames prison policies, like forced integration, for causing the riot that happened in '93. He blames prison officials for making the riot as bloody as it turned out to be.
They knew that that guard was going to be killed. They should be on death row.
How can you say that they knew the guard was going to be killed the next day?
The prisoners told them they were going to kill him on the next day if they didn't see the media.
So in that case, don't the prisoners have a responsibility for that death? More so, much more so, than that warden.
Would the prisoners have ever seen the media had they not done it? I think, yes, the prisoners are responsible as well. But there is a time when man's inhumanity to man becomes so intolerable. Prison officials have killed many prisoners in Lucasville. For example, Jimmy Haynes was murdered by 12 prison guards. None of them was ever held accountable in a criminal court. Instead, the taxpayers forked over $5 million to the dead man's mother. They're never held accountable, never.
Little Rock believes comments like that have so angered Ohio authorities that they can't wait to put him back in prison. And there's a way that can be done. Little Rock is a parole violator. Shortly before the riot, a Kentucky man accused him of making a threat over the phone. Little Rock says it never happened, but feared the charge would send him back to Lucasville. So he fled Ohio 6 weeks before he was supposed to be released from parole. Until this week, he was out of Ohio's reach. Now, he must return and face the state he hoped to forever leave behind. Little Rock planned to turn himself in on Monday, but his Ohio lawyer has advised him not to do that. That lawyer believes that Little Rock will not get a hearing. Now, prison officials say he will get a hearing, but Little Rock wants a guarantee before he sets foot in the state of Ohio. Dave?
Understandable. Thanks a lot, Paul. Paul Adrian reporting live from the state of New Mexico. Helen?
The state of Ohio has a different spin on Little Rock Reed's story. Lawmen say Reed has duped the public and concocted a story of half-truth to stay out of prison. It's a story you'll see only on 10. I-Team reporter Paul Kenny joins us live outside the prison Reed feared he would be returned to when he fled the state 5 years ago. Paul?
Helen, as you mentioned, we are live outside the Lucasville prison, the site of the worst prison riot here in the state of Ohio. Now, something that may come as a surprise, 2 years before the riot here, Timothy Little Rock Reed helped file a lawsuit detailing alleged abuses here at the prison. Abuses inmates later cited as a major cause of the uprising.
During his time in Lucasville, Reed made a name for himself as a jailhouse lawyer and royal pain in the neck for prison officials. He filed several lawsuits and published articles of abuse. In this 1991 class action lawsuit, Reed argued that forcing black and white prisoners to share cells at Lucasville was causing tension in the prison and a clear and present danger of violence. The warden ignored those warnings. 2 years later, this is what happened.
Those boys was killed because they were snitches.
The deadliest riot in Ohio. Reed wasn't in Lucasville during the uprising. He was on parole. When he violated his conditions and faced the possibility of returning, he fled. Reed said either guards or inmates would kill him. The chief of the parole authority insists Reed was never in danger.
I think Mr. Reed may have put his own spin on it for his own sake.
But the New Mexico courts agreed with Reed, ruling his safety would be at risk, writing that he was a refugee from injustice. That gave Reed the freedom to start a new life as a husband, father, and activist in New Mexico. But in the eyes of Ohio lawmen, he's remained a common criminal.
I think Mr. Reed has been trying to set himself apart from every other person like him who absconds supervision. And the fact is that we're treating him no differently than anyone else that comes out on parole and then absconds supervision.
And for that reason, 39 states joined forces to fight this case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, fearing the New Mexico ruling would set a dangerous precedent, allowing dangerous criminals to roam free. The High Court agreed. Little Rock Reed has to come home.
What steps will be taken to ensure his safety?
You know, we have systems in place if prisoners feel that they are under threat of personal harm, for them to report that information and for the prison administration to take appropriate steps to protect them.
Now, state officials say when or if Reed returns to Ohio, he will receive that parole hearing. Not only that, Helen, he also will be able to actually have an attorney present at that parole hearing and also be able to call witnesses to testify on his behalf. And if he does go back to prison, which state officials say is most likely, where he goes really depends on what kind of security risk he is. Helen?
Okay, thanks, Paul. I-Team reporter Paul Kinney reporting live from Lucasville.
Well, Little Rock Reed, as you heard, claims he's a victim, but the 10 TV I-Team discovered he's not the only one. I-Team reporter Kurt Ludlow is here with that part of the story.
Well, Dave, Little Rock Reed says he's paid for his crimes and for speaking out about problems with the Ohio prison system. But in many ways, you've paid for his crimes and his complaints. You've paid right out of your pocket. The I-Team has added up the costs of Little Rock Reed's run-ins with the law, and as you'll see, justice doesn't come cheap.
1979, Texarkana, Texas. Reed robs a store at gunpoint, is arrested, goes to court, and is sent to prison for 3 years, then paroled. Total cost to the taxpayers, $46,000. 1982, Reed and a companion rob a pharmacy. He's caught and sent to prison for 10 years. Total cost to the taxpayers, nearly $107,000. And all that doesn't even begin to touch the money spent by the state to defend itself against lawsuits Reed filed while in prison. While out on parole, $11,200, he's charged with threatening a man and runs to New Mexico. Ohio authorities spend $100,000 to find him. He's caught in Albuquerque and jailed, $11,000. When the case gets appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, New Mexico spends $15,000. Ohio spends $3,500. The U.S. Supreme Court spends $254,000. Oh, and if Ohio authorities have to go to New Mexico to get Reed, that'll cost $1,000 more.
Is it a good use of taxpayer money at this point to go after this man?
Absolutely. One of the reasons General Montgomery was elected to be Attorney General was because she believed in law enforcement. And if there's one fundamental tenet of law enforcement, it's that you can't make exceptions for anybody. You've got to fairly prosecute all individuals that break the law, all individuals that break parole.
And that can break the bank. So far, Little Rock Reed's mistakes have cost you $548,750 plus. But remember, there's more to come.
And don't forget, Reed was in trouble a lot when he was a teenager, and those figures don't even consider those costs or the free legal advice he's gotten. And by the way, Dave, he owes several lawyers here in Ohio and New Mexico as much as $30,000 in legal fees, and he says he doesn't have a dime.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kurt. Now, tonight at 11, Paul Adrian will bring us new information on this fugitive story live from New Mexico. And we are going to let you know how law enforcement officers are tracking down the fugitives.